I'm sure many of us are aware of the findings from the last employment skills survey, which was carried out in 2019, which once again illustrated bottlenecks in terms of skills needs, with 4/5 of employers citing skill shortages in both technical and practical skills areas. Our own STEM Learning Skills Indicator findings report from a couple of years ago illustrated that skill shortages cost the STEM sector an estimated 1.5 billion. So attracting diverse talent will be critical in addressing this deficiency. Students from low socioeconomic backgrounds and other diverse groups, females, BME, first and family, are particularly underrepresented in STEM and are a key audience to overcome any recruitment and skills gap. So today's session is about how employers can support young people from these underrepresented groups to develop their STEM skills and be employment ready. And we're looking at this through the lens of STEM placements. So I'm thrilled we have our 5 panelists, Dr. Katie Petherick from Innovate UK, Tony Allender from Balfour Beatty, Avinash Kant from PepsiCo, Holly McPhillips, who's a postgraduate student at the University of Kent, and Rachel Delorme, our Southwest Nuffield coordinator, who will be speaking in turn and will be introducing themselves in more detail to help us explore this topic from their perspectives, share advice and effective strategies to engage young people from underrepresented groups in STEM placements. There'll also be an opportunity after each panel member has spoken for some questions and a more general discussion at the end. So you don't need to worry about taking notes, as materials from today and the recording will be available afterwards. So I'm going to go over to our first panel member, Dr. Katie Petherick, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Lead at Innovate UK. Katie, if you could tell us a bit more about Innovate UK and your role, and provide us with a funder's perspective as to why attracting and supporting diverse young talent into STEM R&D is so important. Over to you, Katie.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Shamila, and thanks very much for the invitation to be here today. I'm really pleased to be here. So, as you've just heard, I work for Innovate UK, which is the UK's innovation agency. So we support businesses with funding and additional support and networks to help them develop new ideas. And we sit within the wider UK Research and Innovation Organisation, or UKRI, which does the same work across the broader research and innovation sector, so particularly supporting academic research as well. And so while we support current researchers and innovators, we are really keen also to nurture and support the future generations of people coming into the sector. And we really recognise that at the moment, the sector isn't as diverse as it could be. And so our priority with working with younger people is to focus on communities who are currently underrepresented within the sector. And that's why we're really pleased to be supporting 95 of the Nuffield research placements. So I've said that we recognise that the sector isn't as diverse as it could be. We obviously believe that that needs to change for societal reasons, but there's also so much evidence that demonstrates that having more diverse businesses leads to greater success. And so these are just 3 short snippets of the growing amount of research that demonstrates that. So companies who have leadership teams that are more diverse are more likely to outperform their peers financially. UK businesses are losing a lot of money by not engaging with and supporting disabled people. And we know that ethnic minority firms are more likely to export than others. And so this really demonstrates that, as well as the societal reasons for having more diverse organisations, there's a massive significant impact and benefit for businesses as well of being more diverse. And so we really want to be encouraging future generations to come into this organisation, this industry. And so actually our research shows that they don't need too much encouragement. We've done research from 18 to 30-year-olds, which has demonstrated that a significant number of them want to develop their own businesses. And they believe that these businesses will have a significant impact on the biggest challenges that we face globally. So subjects such as global warming. So they're not just interested in joining business to make money, but to actually have real societal impact. And they can also really see the benefit of innovative businesses to local communities. However, there are challenges around this. So while they've got the enthusiasm and desire to join this, they don't actually see the business sector as being particularly accessible. They worry that being young is a barrier to their success, and they don't know where to go locally for support. And that's where we at UKRI think that the Nuffield research placements really come into providing this information. And so these placements really provide that opportunity for access for young people. They can join this programme and they can get first-hand experience of working within an innovative business or organisation. It's a chance for them to make contacts and to build networks and to really start to see themselves as working in similar organisations or setting up their own. And so these placements can be fundamental in shaping their future career aspirations. There's also significant opportunity for the businesses in terms of producing and advertising their sector to younger people and demonstrating why it's essential and exciting to work in those areas. It can be a great opportunity as well for employees to see themselves as mentors, and having worked and supported scientists to do this previously, you can really see the benefit and the enjoyment they get out of it. And also it's a chance to get fresh ideas into the business and different concepts and perceptions as well. So everyone on this call has the opportunity to influence and make positive change in creating a more diverse workforce. We at UKRI are really committed to supporting the best ideas to succeed, and we know that those best ideas will come from a more diverse business. And so for the UK to reach its full potential, we want all available talent, all interested people to be supported to join the research and innovation workforce. And we think that the Nuffield research placements really provide that opportunity as a stepping stone for some people to gain more access to the sector. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. And I know we're just going through to see if people have questions, but I hope you don't mind. I have a question for you. You've illustrated through Nuffield research placements, it's a good vehicle for businesses to engage with young people and so forth. Are there any other sort of ways in which Innovate UK has provided support to empower a diverse collection of people to innovate?
Yeah, so a lot of the research that I showed there, we commissioned because we were interested in understanding young people's perspectives, and that's led us to launch a competition called Young Innovators, which supports 18 to 30-year-olds who are looking to develop their own businesses. And so we provide them with a grant. We provide them for some money to pay themselves to develop their idea, and then also the mentorship and business support around there as well, which has been really successful. And the photos of the people in those slides that I showed are all award winners from that as well. And we're also working with, we have another funding competition called Women in Innovation. And we've worked with some of those winners to put purple plaques up in the schools that they went to and they studied at. And this was to start to combat the shocking statistic that the blue plaques that are around the UK, only 14% of them feature women. And so we were really keen to start increasing that visibility of women in innovation by putting up purple plaques in the schools that they went to.
So if business wants to come forward and do more, what are the avenues in terms of funding and being able to apply for that funding in order to do, the types of engagement that you're talking about?
Yeah, so in terms of the funding and supporting younger people or women in innovation. So if there are people in their businesses who have got ideas, then they should definitely be encouraging them to connect to those competitions. And I think also connecting with Nuffield Placement, and we also collaborate with Founders for Schools as well for a lot of our engagement, which I think is a really, really important opportunity for raising that visibility as well.
And just one question that's come in from Kate. She's asking, she's currently doing a PhD, which is part funded by UKRI, and she's going to be using her time to support disadvantaged young people to help them into her sector. What extra can UKRI do to help her? Are there things that she can access to help her do that type of engagement?
Yes, so UKRI have a dedicated public engagement team, and they collaborate. I'm going to assume it's a science PhD that Kate's doing, but they collaborate with the British Science Association for a number of activities as well, which are really focused on working with currently underrepresented organisations as well. So I'd recommend looking at the British Science Association and the public engagement team as well.
Thank you, Katie. So we're now going to move on to the view from business. And our next panel member is Tony Ellender, the Early Talent Manager at Balfour Beatty. And Balfour Beatty is engaged in a wide range of activities to attract diverse talent into the business, with STEM placements as an example of one of their strategies to engage young people from varied backgrounds. So over to you, Tony, to give your perspective from business.
Lovely, thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tony Ellender, the Emerging Talent Manager for Balfour Beatty, based up in Manchester, but covering the UK. Balfour Beatty is the UK's largest infrastructure and construction company, with about 12,500 of us across the UK, and also in America and Hong Kong. And we're involved in things like HS2, did lots of work on the Olympics Park, Thames Tideway, all sorts of major projects that we're involved in. But we are not diverse at all. In common with the rest of our industry, we are dominated by, well, frankly, people like me. And part of my role in looking after emerging talent, which is our new entrants of apprentices and graduates, as well as developing them and training them, is also to try and use those as agents of change within the business. And it is impossible for construction companies to become more diverse by getting people from other construction companies. So really the only way we can do it is from our new entrants. And what we find is that young people from diverse backgrounds, and also not so young career changers, are not really attracted to construction because of the image that we've already got. So what we find we have to do is to go out to them. We need to reach out to communities rather than waiting for them to come to us. And things like work placements and working through partners who focus on diverse young people is the way to do it. If people aren't going to come to us, we need to go out to them. And organisations like Nuffield and lots of other STEM type organisations and diversity organisations are the way we find to do it. Now, for us, we work with lots of other partners as well around, women coming into construction and ethnic minorities coming into engineering and construction and so on. But Nuffield brings a unique aspect to it, actually, in that we want to attract specifically STEM people. Well, there we go. They're all looking to do STEM subjects going forward in their careers or at university. And for us, it's also not just about gender and ethnicity, but also about social mobility as well. And the fact that the Nuffield research placements emphasise social mobility is really, really important as well. But the other thing is, for us, it's not just that you're getting somebody in who's going to shadow and find out more about your company, but people are actually, while they're with you, doing something tangible. They're doing a research project. So actually, it's a really productive work placement, both for the young person and for us, because we're giving them a piece of research, something that needs looking at within the company. And of course, they're bringing a fresh perspective. It's really interesting that Katie just before said that one of the things that puts off young people is the fact that they're young. Well, actually, the fact that they're young and going to bring a new sense of thinking is exactly what we want with these little research projects that we set them. Because, of course, as we all know, the ultimate diversity is cognitive diversity. And that's what we're really after. So actually, the placement isn't just about us reaching out to these communities and giving those people a chance, but actually they also feed into the success of the company, which is really, really good. And then finally, there's obvious company benefits for us. The people who are mentoring them, who tend to be our existing graduates and apprentices, get lots out of it in terms of developing their own mentoring, coaching and management skills. And last of all, of course, let's not pretend that it's otherwise from an employer perspective. There's obviously an opportunity to influence people to join us later, either as higher or degree apprenticeships in a STEM subject, or if they do decide to go on to university and study something like engineering, then we would hope that they would do placements with us or come back. So there's multiple benefits, but the great thing is about this, actually the benefits to the young person and the company, and also, of course, to the broader industry sector. That's it from me. Happy to take questions later, but thanks very much.
Thank you, Tony. I think one of the things you picked up on was about apprenticeships. And I know that you're a member of the Apprentice Diversity Champions Network.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that and maybe provide examples and strategies that have been described by other members, as well as network partners, as well as yourself?
Yes, so the Apprentice Diversity Champions Network it's a government-led initiative, but lots of companies, but also public sector bodies. Been around 4 or 5 years now, and is specifically around increasing the diversity of people in apprenticeships. So a fairly narrow focus, but actually apprenticeships more broadly are not as diverse as they should be. Meets 3 or 4 times a year and is very much about knowledge exchange, so companies getting ideas from each other, but also understanding where government strategy is going. Lots of companies have lots of different strategies, so we find that many companies like us also work through partners, which is really important. But interestingly, there is no silver bullet, I don't think. That's been the common theme from all the other participants in the ADCN. It's about engaging with young people, engaging with education, engaging through partners. It's about myth busting, and it's about being open. Everything else is detail, but it's really about businesses being seen to be accessible to everybody. And I guess what we found is with the ADCN is nobody's come along, as I say, with the silver bullet, with the magic solution, but there's always lots of little things that you can do, a little bit like British cycling. That sort of accumulation of small things will have a big impact.
But for a business like Balfour Beatty, how, in terms of looking at your engagement strategies, are you looking at quality over quantity in terms of meeting your own agendas with regards to diversity in the workforce?
Both, I guess. We have set ourselves internally some aspirations of our new entrants, and they sort of go up over the next few years. And we're aiming for gender equality by 2025 in our new entrants, and the same from a ethnic minority perspective as well. And we've got a number of steps between there. But ultimately, yes, it is about quality, because people going into STEM degree apprenticeships, or even the trade apprenticeships that we run as well, electricians and construction apprenticeships. It is about people having the right skills, the right motivation, so both are important, and engaging with people, we find, is the way to get both, if you like.
Yeah, and we've just had a question in from Rachel Delorme. Rachel, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, of course, Shamila. So, hi, Tony. So I'm in Cornwall. We've got a lot of construction needs for our workforce pipeline development, and I'm interested in your apprenticeship network, diversity network, and if you promote supported internships as a precursor to those apprenticeships as a way to build that diversity.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Rachel. I'll have to be careful what I say, because I used to live in Devon, so I'll have to.
Don't talk about scones.
Yes. So Nuffield is one thing that we do, and it's a very specific model, but we do other things as well with other partners. So, for example, at the moment, we're just about to take on just over 50 young people through the Kickstart program. And we see that as, that in effect is a pre-apprenticeship program for us, because we're linking it into apprenticeship opportunities. We also do a lot of work with Prince's Trust, for example, and again, there's sort of pre-apprenticeship programs there. And T-levels we're heavily involved in, and we see those as a pipeline into our degree and higher apprenticeships going forward. So what we find, Rachel, is that. And again, there's not one solution. So you mentioned you're in Cornwall. What we find is, if we're doing a project in a local area, the first thing we do is find out what's already going on in that local area, because whilst Balfour Beatty has some off-the-shelf solutions, often there's local organisations and local things as well. So that's often our first port of call: find out what's going on already, and try and engage with that. Does that help?
Yeah, really does. Thank you, Tony.
So thank you, Tony, for giving that overview from the business perspective. We're going to now go to Avinash to hear more from the employer's perspective. And Avinash Kant is an associate principal scientist within R&D at PepsiCo International. And Avinash has hosted students on Nuffield Research Placements. So Avinash, I'll let you introduce yourself and the work of PepsiCo. And what would be great is to hear some of your personal insights and what advice you can share in terms of challenges, successes, and experiences. So thank you, Avinash.
Thank you, Shamila. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to our like-minded people. Do we have the slides on Teams? Yeah, I'm just going to... If we can just take that. Yeah, okay, fantastic. So I thought it'd be great just to say a little bit about PepsiCo. Most people may not know what PepsiCo is, but effectively you will be aware of some of the brands. It is a food and drink business. This is just about the UK. PepsiCo itself is about 250,000 people across the world. The core brands are Walker's Crisps, Quaker Oats, Pepsi, Tropicana, Gatorade, that type of thing. So it's fairly sort of fun for you snacks, I guess, but obviously moving in towards for more healthier snacking and healthier foods in general. So very much food science based. Myself, I'm a food scientist and a flavor scientist specializing in flavor. I'm based in our Leicester R&D site, which is where I am right now. I'm actually about a 15-minute walk away from our facility. Unfortunately, with the COVID, we're not allowed to go on site due to health and safety. But we are a very multi-locational company, encompassing a lot of different sites, manufacturing sites, distribution centres, offices, corporate offices, and of course our R&D centre just in the UK. Nuffield for us is a really great opportunity for us to engage with the young generation of aspiring potential scientists in the future to try and encourage them and at least make aware of the possibilities of what a food company like PepsiCo can offer. If we go to the next slide. Yeah, just to give you a bit of a taste of what STEM can, how it impacts us in our company. It always goes all the way down to the farming, agricultural practices and raw materials, through to obviously the processing and the manufacturing plants, how we put things together and package them, the insights and information. So not only of the raw materials, but also consumers, people, distribution, how we attain our sustainability goals that we have set ambitious targets for over the next 10 to 20 years, and of course trying to figure out how what kind of skill sets that we require to try and tackle some of these large questions. And now typically, if you go to the next slide, what happens is, it looks like it's a bit of an animation. Yeah. There you go. So typically, it's what we think about attracting new talent. It's almost like a linear process, right? So the school, kids, young children go to college maybe, and then into universities, and then typically arrive through an application. But we need to broaden that aspiration of those talent pool, and how we achieve that is based on what Tony had said and alluded to in his talk regarding, there's no silver bullet. We need to expand our ways in which how we attract and how we encourage and see how we can attract the new talent. So in PepsiCo, what we've done over the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years is gradually build up a way in which we can tap into that pool and actively engage with our young generation. The next slide here will show you this as an example. So what we have here is a program based on tackling or utilizing various programs at various stages of a child's development. So starting all the way down to, I know we talked about young children, trying to attract them enthusiasm. How do we do that? So we do that by going into schools at a very young age, to just basically encourage science as a fun activity. Coding club, for example, it's utilizing our statisticians and math experts who encourage and help children understand about coding. We have something called Curiosity Club workshops, where we take on activities and bring it into school to help the teachers to understand, to help the children understand how science, technology, engineering, and maths plays a part, especially in the role of food and drink business. We obviously take part in careers workshops, and so on and so forth. As you can see, it sort of builds up over the age span, from 5 years old all the way up to 21 years old, and beyond as well, of course, attracting new talent in industry from other industries. Nuffield itself, of course, is very specific for a sort of a year 12 perspective. And at that age, this is where, students are very seriously thinking about what they're going to do. I remember as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old at A-level, still not having a clue of what I'm going to do. I knew science was really interesting, but without having the opportunity to be in a real world exam, in a real world placement, to understand how I can apply myself, it really opens your eyes. The Nuffield placements for us, from a personal perspective, does encourage students to see what is possible. So what tends to happen is you get the students who are very nervous or unsure of what they can potentially contribute into a work placement. And what I personally found was they develop not only from an intellectual point of view, but from a personal development point of view, to understand those soft skills, those critical thinking skills, how science and engineering and technology and maths applies in the world of work, and builds confidence in a way. So it's a great opportunity for any industry sector to encourage and sort of advertise what their role of skill sets can provide in terms of encouraging new students into their fields. The next slide will show you our specific examples of how we have implemented this program by encouraging our staff. Now, it's not easy. You do need a lot of commitment from a lot of different people, and if you have a lot more people, a pool of people from your company to tap in and volunteer almost their time, it becomes easier. And what we have done is taken on 3 local schools in our local vicinity in the north part of Leicester. We have 78 ambassadors. This is a slide from 2019. Of course, 2020 was very unusual. That means we're able to spread ourselves in terms of who can actively take part in all those different programs we have, and also create the necessary activities that will contribute and support those programs. Those activities, if you go to the next slide, will show you a bit of a taste for what that means for our side of the business. So food and drink obviously involves sensory. There's very specific skill sets or activities regarding engineering. Liquids is an area. So it's trying to encourage putting in tangible activities that demonstrate where STEM can play a role. And Nuffield itself can, some of our students have helped create some of these activities. Their contribution is, almost sort of helping to design some of these tests to get their point of view of what is it, we're all over the age of 21, 25, some of us go up to 50, 60. And so you need someone at sort of closer in age to understand what really ticks those boxes for a young generation to help them understand where science and technology can help. And the last slide, I believe, is just to give you an example of how the overall program, including Nuffield, has helped many different students, and the amount of time that's been committed, and the number of people, not only just children but also their parents, to encourage that. Again, it's a gradual, step-by-step process where you hope that your one contact will help, but of course it's a lifelong journey. And of course, it doesn't happen without a lot of support from your colleagues. So I encourage, taking a part in a scheme like Nuffield to, if you haven't done anything in this space, tap into those various options. And Nuffield is one area which is really valuable for us in terms of connecting to the young students to understand how we can encourage the next generation of scientists for our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Avinash. And actually, one of the things which really struck me, you were saying that, for the students who are engaging in your programs, in terms of their growth and understanding, but for PepsiCo and for, colleagues like yourself, we often mention, there's the benefits of mentoring and coaching, but what about in terms of, is there any sort of reverse mentoring that's going on where you're understanding a lot more about these diverse young people who you're looking to recruit? Are you able to sort of touch upon that?
Exactly. It was the final comments I had. It's you, especially with setting up research reports or research assignments. The valuable nature of having that reverse mentorship is to get their points of views across. What's happening in that world of this new generation Z or whatever the next, this sort of cohort of generation is. The world is changing fast. It's very difficult to keep up. Having a sort of a bounce back with and a conversation. It's not just it's not one way. Of course, we're teaching them, we're exposing them to new ideas, but also we're learning at the same time to understand from their perspective how the world is changing or not changing, and how, again, it's to do with the diversity of thought. I think Tony mentioned this as well. It's having those touch points to have on a one-to-one basis or in a group basis to have that sort of discussion, and it is really valuable. It does happen. Of course, the confidence of the students is, they're usually shy at the beginning, but then they open up and then they're able to express themselves, put things into context, and that's really valuable. And you do get to you do get aha moments where you assume things, and all of a sudden you see a different perspective.
And Avinash, some colleagues have asked, has any of the sort of PepsiCo program been delivered virtually since the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, yes, that's a good question, a great question. A lot of it was hands-on activity, that sort of face-to-face engagement, being out, especially in the early years. You want to be in the environment where students are more comfortable with, so you go into the classrooms. So some of that has been challenging. We do also offer career workshops, career talks, people like me, which a person will then profile their job, the day-to-day job. Some of the activities were sort of more practical based. They're a little bit more difficult where the practical nature of it becomes difficult. Coding Club has been great. It's been one of the big ones where, of course, you can use Excel or a computer program. But yes, where we can, we have, and this sort of thing as well in terms of engagement of trying to do this. So, and the Nuffield itself, we have pretty much since last year taken on virtual placements. So whereby we give them a brief, a very focused piece of work. It's not just there to create some work out of it for the company. It's there to sort of help encourage a two-way relationship with the student and the mentor to understand and encourage that. And virtual, it works really well. It's done on a Zoom or through Google Classrooms. It works really well.
Fantastic. And I know, Avinash, there are a couple of people in the chat who would love to connect with you. And so following on from this, we'll try and make sure we can connect them to you, if that's all right. So thank you. We're going to move on now, and I'm very excited to welcome our next panel member, who is Holly McPhillips. And Holly is currently a postgraduate research student in physics of quantum materials for energy and electronics at the University of Kent, and a 2014 Nuffield Research Placement beneficiary. So Holly, I'm going to let you now tell us a little bit about your own background and your personal experience of being a Nuffield student, and really how your placement has added value to your current role and other aspects in your time in STEM. Thank you, Holly.
Okay, I'll share my screen just now. So, is that all okay? Yeah?
That's all great, thank you.
I'm delighted to discuss with you how my Nuffield research placement has ultimately defined my career path so far. There are a variety of key moments as shown here, which I believe that without my Nuffield research placement, I certainly would not have had the motivation or confidence to pursue these opportunities. So my journey started at a secondary state school in West Lothian. People around me typically would not think about going to university. They were more going to do practical courses at college. So I didn't really have much influence around me. But I always knew that I had this keen interest in science, and specifically my interest was in pharmaceuticals and the environment. And I'd always wanted to go to university because I was passionate about learning, and I would be the first in family to pursue higher education. The opportunity to apply for a Nuffield research placement was discussed during a personal development class and when I was setting my Scottish Highers. My class of 2015, my class of 25, at the time, it was extremely diverse. This opportunity was not just given to me, it was everyone, my whole year group was told, why don't you apply for this and see what happens? So for me, I knew I had to apply. It was the prospect of seeing science beyond the classroom that was really exciting to me, and to meet specialists in chemistry and biology, which at the time were my two favourite subjects, was just too good to miss. Fortunately, I was placed at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, only a short drive away from home, in the summer of 2014. I was supervised by Professor Ted Henry in environmental toxicology, which at the time was perfect for the topics I was interested in. Ted is currently a leader in Heriot-Watt University's self-assessment team for the Athena Swan Award, and has always been passionate about addressing gender disparity in STEM, so to be placed with someone with his interest was absolutely delightful. I was looked after by one of his PhD students, Valentina Riccatone, who became a role model as she was a young woman in science, and only just early on into her PhD she was interested in being in academia. She was always extremely enthusiastic and very patient. This made every day more exciting, and there was never a dull moment. There was a dynamic that I wanted to continue in everything I did, and to this day I still strive for that thrill. So the aim of my Nuffield project was to understand the effect of pesticide substances on the behaviour and mortality of great pond snails. And I was really excited to present this topic in the form of a poster, as shown here, at the Nuffield Research Conference in Edinburgh. This felt such a great achievement, and it was something I could show off to everyone who attended. I had also submitted the project for a Gold Crest Award, and to this very day, my research poster remains hung up in the science corridor of my school, which I think is a very cool legacy to have. When I applied for university, my placement featured heavily in my UCAS form, as this was an incredible experience I was proud of. I pursued a degree in chemistry at the University of St Andrews, still motivated by pharmaceuticals and toxicology. When I started, it was not so terrifying to be in an undergraduate lab. I felt confident in the dynamic that I had found in the summer of 2014 and felt this incredible resilience when things would go wrong. Additionally, my Nuffield research placement developed my appreciation for outreach projects. The university had partnered with the Royal Society of Chemistry to run a project called ChemBus, where we would travel across Fife and Tayside secondary schools to show them exciting chemistry projects. This wasn't something I had when I was in school, so I felt very motivated to be part of such an exciting project. And in fact, these projects have an impact on the uptake of sciences over the next 3 years. And I also used this as an opportunity to tell students about my Nuffield research placement, with the hope that perhaps they would apply as well and benefit just as much as I did. Alongside my degree, I also took up a summer internship in functional materials at the Technical University in Łódź in Poland. The basis of my application actually included my research placement because this was an experience that I had outside of university, and I really saw the benefit of having this experience so young that it would be sort of, this was really my interest in research, and project management as well was also vital. And I thought, I'm definitely in with a chance, because every Nuffield research placement is unique. No matter the supervisor or the research topic, you're always contributing something different, and it's not really been done before. That's been highlighted in the last few talks. So I then pursued a year in industry during my degree, which I did at the ICIS Neutron Immune Source in Oxfordshire. And in fact, some of the industry and businesses here today have probably used ICIS before for research into batteries, catalysts, transport components, and much more. I kept my Nuffield research placement on my CV because this was still an incredible experience that I was very proud of and an achievement I wanted to highlight. I recall that during my interview, my supervisors commented on the placement and said that they were very intrigued that I was still so interested in research and that I had this interest from such a young age. I was delighted to be offered this position, and I've presented my work at numerous conferences. The two pictured here are at the Institute of Physics student meeting, which took place in Swansea, and at the European Conference on Neutron Scattering in St. Petersburg, Russia. This working year had also really opened my eyes up onto how diverse the scientific community could be. We were meeting from people from all around the world, and I've continued to add to my list of role models. Finally, I graduated with a Master's in Materials Chemistry at St Andrews. Now, you're probably wondering that I started off interested in environmental toxicology, but then I've now pursued materials. Well, over the course of my degree, I started to become interested in functional materials, and by choosing chemistry, I was able to see a bit of everything, finally specialising in materials. And I think that's the beauty of STEM, is that you learn so many different projects along the way that you can definitely specialise in something a bit more, or just take a bit of everything from everywhere. Fortunately enough, all my work positions have not quite put me off research yet. I'm now pursuing a PhD in frustrated magnetic materials at the University of Kent. However, I do continue to look back on my Nuffield placement because this was a huge turning point for me. It was the first time I had true ownership of a project and that I got a taste for what being a researcher was like. Lastly, 2 final points to make as I wrap up my section. I'm delighted to say that 2 people that I met on the day of my Nuffield Research Conference in 2014 are doing extremely well. One colleague is working at the Roslin Institute in Edinburgh and the other is pursuing a degree in medicine at the University of Aberdeen. I'd also got back in touch with Ted recently and he was absolutely delighted to hear from me. He informed that I am the first Nuffield student he has had to go on into a PhD and he's continued to have students come through his lab. They have gone on to pursue master's degrees and industry roles in his field, which again showcases how valuable Nuffield research placements can be. I understand there's a wide range of themes covered here, so definitely open to any questions.
Holly, I'd just like to say so many people have said how inspiring your journey is. And one question that's been asked is, how old were you when you first had your first idea or feeling of the kind of work that you would like to do? Because you've just mentioned you're first in family, and my understanding is your family doesn't have a background in STEM. So can you tell us a little bit more?
So if I'm thinking very far back, I think there was some sort of outreach project, I think, because Avinash mentioned about the project of coding with primary school age children, and I'm pretty sure there was some sort of Bang Goes the Theory workshop or something that maybe I think happened when I was very young. And I'm not saying that was, you know, the point of, yes, I want to do that, but I think perhaps that engagement definitely has added value to this whole journey. And yeah, like there's no one in my family who are in science either, so having that connection outside of my family and seeing, well, basically just sort of looking at other people that are surrounding me has really helped sort of encourage me as well. Like, you know, your parents will always say, oh, you're doing so well, even when it's, you know, a bit bad. But when you have role models like how with Ted and Valentina and then some of the others that I've got along the way, you know, there is this delicate balance of, you know, you're doing really great, but there's this sort of criticism as well of, you know, well, have you tried thinking about it this way or sort of doing things this way? And, you know, it's all very valuable experience along the way.
And I'm sort of, you know, a follow-up question that I asked Avinash about the reverse mentoring. From your perspective, how has your presence, you know, being first in family, a female, informed your placement providers' knowledge of post-16 education, understanding of student needs and awareness of the students' perspective when it comes to their own prospects?
Well, as I said, Ted was, well, he still leads the Heriot Watt self-assessment team for the Athena Swan Award. And I think by having or focusing on a specific element that you would want to change has definitely helped. If you've already got, like, we could all be supportive of all the communities that need to be represented, but I think by concentrating on one part of it and then sort of delving off into the other elements, I think that's really helped. And I think that was a huge motivation as well for hiring a Nuffield student. In terms of supporting me with my background, I think it was just the fact that I was, at 17, you're very impressionable. And I think recognising that, and if you have many students come through the lab, you'll get used to sort of, you know, well, perhaps we need to sort of focus on this direction. And well, Ted knew immediately that I didn't have a great lab space, or because I went to such a small school with nothing really, we couldn't really do many experiments. So I think sort of having that one-to-one with a student in the first place and sort of gauging what kind of experience have they had, or even just finding out if they've been in an outreach project before, have they had people come to visit and do experiments with them, for example. You can sort of see, you know, where you could go, because every student's going to be different, and you need to probably get a feel for that when you invite someone in. But it's definitely a huge impact overall, no matter what you do, I think so.
And a question that's come is, in your career travel, Holly, have you noticed any social or regional differences in attitudes to STEM aspiration?
That's a great question. To be honest, it was when I took the job at the ISIS neutron muon source. It was a completely different dynamic from anything I've ever seen. Because still at university, to be fair, you don't really have these groups represented very well, and it was very different to see women in physics and having ethnic minorities, like, because it just wasn't something I was seeing at university, or it wasn't really brought to my attention. And there is a bit of I would say I met a lot more women when I was working at ISIS than I would ever have interacted with during my degree in general. I've always found myself in male-heavy groups, and when I went to ISIS, it was just a complete flip of the scale, and there was just very inspirational people there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Holly. You're a very inspirational role model, and I think it's wonderful to hear all the STEM engagement activities you do yourself to engage young people in STEM, you know, based on your own experience talking about that coding at primary, understanding the value of doing that engagement. So thank you so much. And I know you'll be staying around for some more questions a little bit later on, but we're now going to move on to our final panel member, who is Rachel DeLorme, our Nuffield Research Placements Coordinator in the Southwest. Rachel, please tell us a little bit about your role and really effective strategies in engaging young people from underrepresented groups in things like STEM placements.
Thanks, Shamila. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk amongst this panel of very knowledgeable and inspiring people. So I work in Cornwall Council. My background is in biochemistry, and I moved into education, and we coordinate Nuffield placements across the Southwest in collaboration with University of Bath. I think looking at what Avinash's programme, it kind of highlights the multi-layered approach that is required. Speaking and listening to Holly, understanding that it needs to start really, really early. Research has shown that actually young people are making decisions in primary school. They're getting a feeling for that direction before they're 11 years old. And that's where we really need to start our work, even not afraid to work in preschool. Young people are making decisions not just about what they can do, what they feel they'd like to do, but they're making really clear assumptions about what they can't do, what's not available to them. And it's really important to go back to that really simple phrase of see me to be me. They need role models. Can I see somebody like me doing that job? So in preschool, that kind of engagement could be as simple as dressing up as a flavour scientist, dressing up as an expert in muon particles. You know, what does that mean? Not just dressing up as those jobs that are visible to young people, going on to primary school, doing an investigation, asking a question, because really that's what research is all about. It's about asking a question where we don't necessarily know the answer, an opportunity there for young people to build resilience when they realise actually it doesn't always work. We don't always get the answer we think we're going to get. It doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just more data, and to kind of understand that approach, building that resilience, honing in, capitalising on their curiosity. And then as we go through getting into that work experience, and employer engagement is something that we are really strong on in Cornwall, and that we really push, not just an engagement between students and employers, but also with their teachers and their careers leaders that are involved in the supporting young people with their decisions. So how can they talk about coding, construction, biochemistry, flavour chemistry. How can those careers be highlighted in the curriculum? And we've realised in Cornwall that when that is done well, it actually increases the aspiration of the young person, because they're not sitting in class saying, well, why am I learning this? It's not relevant. I'm never going to use that ever as a grown-up. Actually, if they can see what it leads to, an exciting job, and I'm talking about those jobs that they don't see. Our Avinash mentioned, that there aren't very many courses in flavour science. I didn't know until last week that was a job. So if we let our teachers know this information, and they can include it in their lessons for young people, so it's a many layered approach. I liked the slide that Avinash showed, where we could see where all these interventions were happening and how they overlap. That's not within the gift of all organisations to be able to put on a programme as extensive and comprehensive of that. And in Cornwall, some of our companies have taken a sector-led approach. We've got one of the highest numbers of SMEs in our area. And what they've done is come together to be able to provide opportunities as a sector. So, for example, Tech Girls, we've got lots of small software companies in Cornwall that are not able to put on a comprehensive programme, but they really need to develop their workforce. There's a massive skills shortage. And we were lucky enough to have a Nuffield student hosted in Tech Girls who did a really impactful piece of research around the perception actually and desires of young girls to take part in computer science in the future. And that leads on to the Nuffield placements and why they're attractive to our young people. For me, there's three main strands that stand out when I talk to our hopefuls and then our scholars. One is prestige. To have that Nuffield label, it's a badge of honour. It's recognised as being a high quality stamp or brand, if you like. So there's a prestige aspect to them earning that place, and then they're proud of that. But what is really key is that they get to see the difference they make, and both Holly and Katie mentioned that it's really important that the work that they're doing is real, relevant, and not the shelf project. It's a real question, and it's dynamic, and it's now, and they need to understand what difference that makes. And we can see ourselves the difference in young people from at the start of their Nuffield journey to the end, how they grow in confidence, how their skills mature, and how they are really very different at the end. Yeah, that's really really key. Thinking about how we attract a diverse range of young people and how we find their placements. So we do a roadshow, and we talk to young people, and we try to encourage them. This work needs to start from primary school. We already mentioned it, so that they don't think that's something I can't do. And there's a lot of work we do with employers. So, for example, I'm thinking about a young lady called Becky, who we placed with an aerospace company several years ago. Becky was profoundly physically disabled and required personal care. A daunting ask of an employer to consider accommodating a young person with those needs for a long period of time to complete the research project. What I found and what we do is at the heart of all our work is building relationships. So allowing that employer to meet the young person, to see them as a human being and not as an obstacle on a paper, not start with that deficit model, but actually don't think about what Becky can't do, but think about what she can do. So Becky had an interest in remote technology, so touchless controls. Obviously a vested interest, and that's what this company were investigating. She was also very brilliant in her area, so they were able to access that skill, and they've stayed in touch with her, and I understand there's an intention for her to return to work at that company once she has graduated. So that's really key to kind of break down those misconceptions and those misperceptions. And a young man who I helped to place many years ago really brought that home to me when he said, don't say I've got a disability, I have different abilities. He was actually autistic, and he was brilliant at spreadsheets and data and all of that stuff, and actually that's a strength. So think about how we can place our young people so their different abilities actually bring something that others may not. Yeah, so we've already talked about it. The other speakers have already talked about how it's a benefit for young people by looking behind the curtain, getting that first-hand experience to inform their decision making. And just to think, those underrepresented groups that we've been talking about, it's an untapped talent pool. It's worth making that effort to make your offer attractive to those young people. I don't know if there's any questions.
I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask Rachel is, I know that you have had some students who've been living in care, who are care leavers, who have done the placement program, and about flexibility, because sometimes in terms of the young person's personal circumstances, it's not a one size fits all type of approach. Do you want to just expand on that in terms of working with such a diverse range of young people?
Yeah, sure. So so young carers, with 2,500 young carers in Cornwall, starting at age 500 of those are under the age of 10, and then we go on to our older young people. They're creating their new lives, but they might have commitments at home, and it's about building that relationship with employers, supporting the young person and the employer to have a relationship based on trust, so that the young person feels able to say, I can't start at 8:45 because I need to give my mother meds or whatever, or it's tricky for the bus, and to have that open conversation, and for employers to understand that by providing that flexibility, actually they get to tap into that talent pool that we've talked about. So it's about compassion, kindness, understanding, flexibility, all of that on a foundation of trust. It's about relationships.
And just to say, for example, some of these students have successfully gone on to complete and gone on to university and have reflected back on their experience, having that initial sort of support and trust in them has really benefited them to continue on their STEM pathway.
Yeah, so important. We've had students who've been self-supporting since they were 14, living in the YMCA, and at times taking part in a science degree has felt like something almost unattainable. Doing a Nuffield placement gives them that step in. They can see what that world looks like, what it feels like. They can build up networks and contacts, and they can start to feel like their peers that are from more supportive backgrounds. I'm not saying it's a walk in the park, because when we place those young people, they do need a lot more support. Their confidence is very low, and they will need to be reminded that they are worthy of their place. Yeah, I think that's really important, that they get imposter syndrome.
And as you've highlighted, and other panel members have highlighted, and through things that are coming through the chat, Rachel, this this priority for things to start at primary, how important it is for employers to be engaging with young people from diverse backgrounds right from primary age, because a lot of decisions start very early on, and then informs their pathway going forward. Thank you so much, Rachel. That's been really helpful. I'm going to thank the panel and open this up to more widely. We still have Tony, Katie, Holly, and Rachel here, and I think what we've discussed today is the need to engage and support young people from these diverse backgrounds in order to support that recruitment pipeline going forward, and some of the benefits of placements. And there are, I think, lots of lessons that we can take forward to help us engage with these groups. But it would really be lovely to hear from anyone here about their experiences, as I'm sure others are going to find it really helpful. So is there anyone who'd like to make comments, observations, or share their own experiences of what they've been doing to attract young people from diverse backgrounds?
I believe we've got a raised hand from Gail. So Gail, if you wanted to unmute yourself and come in to ask your question or comment, that would be great.
First, I wanted to say thank you very much for inviting me and for all the panel's input. I think Mr. Graff wanted to make a comment, but I haven't found the chat. So do you want to make the comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm a retired engineer now, CEng, member of the IET. My feeling, having brought up 6 children, is that the problem starts at primary age, where girls in particular, and also children from disadvantaged backgrounds, get frightened of mathematics very early, and therefore STEM, if it wants to get more people to adopt science and technology, should also put a lot of effort into making sure that at a very young age, children become familiar with and enjoy arithmetic and maths rather than becoming frightened of it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do any of the panel members want to respond to that? Rachel? Yes.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And actually what we find working with our very young children is that they do love numbers. If we don't call it maths, and we talk about numbers, and they enjoy that interplay between the number bonds and the ratios, and what do they do? They really enjoy that. And then it's when we start to, what I've noticed anyways, this is not based on research, it's what I've noticed, is that when we start to give them problems to solve and then tell them they've got them wrong, that's when the joy is killed, and that interest fades. So there's something to be done around keeping the joy in number work.
Thank you, Rachel. And Katie, you wanted to comment on this as well.
Yeah, and just add from what Rachel said, actually, I think there is research around that demonstrates people do get put off by that, particularly girls as well. But I was going to say, as well as engaging them younger, we should also be engaging the families as well. And that's a really key aspect that I found with some of my volunteering work, is that you can have the support at school and the encouragement, but also you want to be breaking down those barriers and those concerns that perhaps families have as well. And that's another opportunity then for building. I don't know if many people have heard about Science Capital, but it's showing those different areas and kind of building connections in different ways.
Each wall.
And Holly, I think you wanted to come in as well.
Yes, so it's quite funny that you have mentioned it's one of those off-putting things, because I think at some point in high school, I remember, I think it was my teacher had said, it doesn't matter if you don't get to the right answer, you've just got to have like the working. And I think if you emphasize on this whole, like, how do we get there, and putting pieces together, that definitely changes your mindset. It transforms it completely. And I think to have that from a young age, I wish I would have had that younger, because I probably would have really loved maths. I think if we homed in on sort of that kind of psychology, it would definitely be encouraging, and not just have it late on when you're sitting exams. It has to matter when you start from the beginning. So.
Thank you. And I mean, one of the things that, following on from Katie about engaging parents, I wonder if others can provide what they've been doing in terms of engaging parents. If there are other people here who have been sort of doing activities which are engaging families and involving them in order to help build that sort of science capital that Katie's been talking about. Do we have anyone here who's as a business has focused? Rachel, you want to come in and say some things that Cornwall Council have been doing?
Yeah, if that's okay,
Yes,
just in the absence of other voices.
Yeah.
So we have not in the last couple of years, but previously worked with Children's University to put on activities for young people and also their families, and that included activities that they could do together that were STEM based, but also where we separated the parents and carers from the young people and did slightly different activities to engage them and interest them and let them understand what the prospects are. So that was one other thing. Another pilot that we did was putting on careers evenings. So we did it in the winter, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, one every night of the week, with a different sector every evening and speakers from those sectors. And so we had young people could come, but they had to bring a grown up. So we didn't have to bring a parent or a carer necessarily. It could be an older brother or sister, cousin, whoever is interested in their future. And that was really successful as well. We got some really positive feedback from the adults about how, it was nice to not just drop off, but actually be part of the action.
Thank you. And Tony, for Balfour Beatty, is there any sort of activities to directly engage with the families of these young people that you're looking to support going forward?
It was a really interesting question, actually, because it's a real gap for us as a business, and we find that actually parents are really, really difficult to get to. There's a couple of publications out there, but they're sort of commercial publications, so you never quite know what their reach is. Up in Scotland, there's actually a sort of a parental careers website. I can't remember the name of it offhand. I've just made a note for Children's University. I've never heard of that. But I guess something we thought about doing but haven't got to yet is having some events for parents in the local community, sort of linked into things like either National Apprenticeship Week or to sort of in the summer term when our apprentices complete their apprenticeships as a sort of celebration type thing. We haven't done it yet, but it's a bit impractical at the moment in a virtual world. But it's about the only thing we can think of, and I'd love to be able to get to parents better about apprenticeships in particular, but also about STEM careers. So any good ideas in the chat, gratefully received.
I mean, Holly, I'd be really interested because you're first in family, and from discussions I've had with many students, sometimes for them, it's, really engaging their parents and guardians and saying, I'm interested in this, and getting their backing to keep pursuing what you're interested in. So, from your own perspective, or, engaging families, where their background isn't STEM and so forth, what do you think would be successful ways going forward to try and engage them, thinking about it from your own personal experience?
Yes, so it is definitely difficult to explain to your parents who both left school at 16, exactly what science is, because it's so broad. And even now I struggle to tell them what my PhD really is about. But I think the way I kind of got around discussing things were sort of telling them about my day, especially when I had to choose subjects. I chose biology, chemistry and maths. And just by having sort of these conversations and sort of relating it to real life, I've always found it interesting, especially chemistry, because chemistry is everywhere. I'd be like, saying, oh, look, you're drinking Coca-Cola. We did like an experiment where you put a Mentos in it and it goes everywhere, just things like that. It was definitely the practical things. And I remember also telling my mum about pH indicators, because it was like colour of the rainbow. And I think it's mostly those engaging activities that definitely spark the conversation to talk to parents. And I think when I told them I wanted to be a scientist, my dad thought I was, going to the moon or something. And yes, that's quite funny, but at the same time, it's just nice that it was never discouraged, but it was also never like forced encouragement. It was never like pushing and being like, what are you doing now and stuff. It was just so casual, and the fact that I could relate what I was doing in a classroom to something that was in the house, it was definitely beneficial. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. And we've got a couple of hands up. Megan, are you able to tell me who's got their hand up?
So Fiona raised her hand first. So Fiona, if we can come to you and if you can unmute and ask your question or comment, that would be great.
Yes, good morning, everyone. And thank you very much. The presentations this morning have been really, really fascinating. As you can see, the banner behind me, I'm on the drive to promote we're developing, bringing forward a new university for Peterborough. It's a city that is one of the fastest growing cities in the UK, but doesn't have a university. So there's a big drive to fill that higher skilled gap. Before that, I've worked in FE, I've worked in the skills arena now for the past 12 years, promoting STEM, women in STEM apprenticeships. And I want to try and bring and align the FE, the young people, everything into a university. So it's not just seen as a scary brick wall that, we want to widen access. So really my push out is really, at the moment, we're at the stages that the university will open in September 2022. We're going to be the fastest opening university that we've got to put a university and bring it forward in 2 years in a pandemic. So the play is really, I'm doing a lot of business engagement. We want to make sure we're putting the right curriculum on to support those skills gaps, look at future skills, looking at that horizon scanning. And I've had about 102, 103 business engagements with different businesses interacting and giving us input into those curriculums. So I've set up sector interest groups across, mostly in STEM. And really, if there's any of the businesses on the call today that would love to come and attend some of those sessions or have separate meetings with us, we want to get your insights as to the skills that you're looking for. We want to promote widely to the talent pools coming out of our schools, coming out of our colleges, aligning with that. And we're also looking at level 3, so that's for those people who've left school, didn't think university was for them, but then maybe career changers, people that needed that life chance. And that's what we're wanting just to promote as a university that's really technically minded, but employment focused, so that when students do a degree, they're coming out and getting a job. We want to link it within businesses, but link it most importantly with giving them a job, especially now when we're going to be picking up the pieces for a long time with the pandemic and what it's caused to displacing people in certain sectors, those career changers, but young people coming out of school with their education attainment really affected by this. We don't want young people stepping into university where they've been graded this year fairly by their teachers, they think, but maybe a bit overdone, and maybe they're not ready for that. So we want to also support that as well. So there's a massive piece of work that we need to do, because this pandemic is going to cause scarring for years to come. And I think us working together in partnership with STEM learning, with colleagues and businesses across FE, HE, and the Chamber and FSB and all those other collaborators, we're keen to do that. So that's my plea, really.
Great.
Not so much as a question, but
thank you, Fiona. And I'm sure there are a lot of people here who'd like to collaborate. I don't know if you want to put your email in the chat so that people can follow up with you. But thank you. There's another raised hand. So Megan, I'll go to you.
Yeah. So Steve, I think we'll come to you next if you can unmute and ask your question or comment.
Oh, good morning, everybody. I'm from EDT, which is a charitable educational trust which organises experiences, placements and projects for young people of age 7 to 21, actually, about 40,000 last year. And I'd just like to endorse an awful lot of what's been said. There was a speaker that was, in fact, 2 speakers saying how important the primary ages were, and we really feel that at EDT. In point of fact, we're looking at, although obviously at the moment in the virtual context, but we're organising programs that will be very interesting to primary school teachers. About families, I would totally agree. If you get the families involved, then, you know, I happen to be an engineer, but if I was a scientist, I'm sure it's exactly the same. You would get a lot more take up from that family. And we run something called the STEM Family Challenge, which is usually held after school. And I've been to a few of these, and I can tell you the parents get very competitive with the projects that that they actually run. Holly, I thought what you said in your presentation, you were absolutely inspirational, and some of the placements that we do, for example, gap year students or students at universities, we do get some funding for this, but obviously always keen for companies to fund us. So we're out there, and if anybody is interested, I'll put my contact details and our website on the in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Are there any other hands up? I'm conscious that we're nearly coming to a close here. So any final questions for the panel or thoughts before we unfortunately have to end the session? Any other questions? No?
Really interested in the Peterborough University. We've got an office and a contract there, and it's where I passed my driving test, so I can do with the trip there.
Fantastic. So Tony's willing to drive round now. He can drive to Peterborough University, which is wonderful. So what I will say is thank you to everyone, to our panel members, for our 5 panelists. Thank you so much for your contribution today. It's been very interesting, a very interesting discussion, and plenty of food for thought. And I would just like to say that during the registration, if you're happy, we will be sharing relevant details with people, especially our coordinators, our Nuffield coordinators going forward, and they will follow up with you in the coming weeks. We'll be sending out follow-up answers to any questions not able to be discussed during the conversation after the meeting. So I know Avinash put in the chat, happy for people to follow up with him. So if you can just maybe put details in that you would like to follow up with Avinash, and then we will be able to connect you. And really just to say, I hope you all have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you at another STEM learning event. So thank you very much, everyone. Keep safe and well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.